The trees went in on their sides, roots first, in the cold spring mud before the frost was all the way out of the ground. A boy, 12 years old, working alone along the north edge of the home quarter with a borrowed spade and a 5-gallon pail of seedlings no thicker than a pencil. He set them in 3 long rows, angled toward the northwest, where the hard weather always came from. He wore his father's old chore coat with the sleeves turned back twice at the wrist. When a man asked him what they were for, he said only that they were for the snow, and he said no more than that. He would not explain himself. Not to the men who slowed their trucks on Willerud Road. Not to his grandfather. Not to anyone. He just kept setting the little trees, one every 6 feet, walking the line with the pail until the light was gone off the fields. Nobody in McHenry County knew what Anders Sundberg had in mind. In 5 winters, they would. If stories of quiet patience, of ordinary people who saw what others missed and were proven right by nothing but time, mean something to you, take a moment to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us where in the country you are watching from tonight. It helps these small, true stories from the land find the people who need them. The Sunbird place sat in the north of the county, on ground the family had broken and planted since 1911. It was flat, open country, the kind where you can watch a truck come for 10 minutes before it reaches your yard. There were no trees on the home quarter to speak of, only the section road, the fence lines, and a sky that in winter went the color of old pewter and stayed that way for days. The wind was the one constant. It came down off the open plain with nothing to slow it, and in a hard blow it would strip a field bare and pile the snow wherever it pleased. Anders was the middle child, and a quiet one. Not a clever boy, not quick with a book, only watchful. His father, Carl, was a careful, unhurried man who fixed a thing once and fixed it right. His mother, Ingrid, kept a garden that had no business growing in that gray soil, and yet it did. From the time he was small, Anders noticed things the others walked past. He knew which ewe would lamb first by the way she stood. He knew where the water sat after a rain. He watched, and he kept most of what he saw to himself. The neighbors made their jokes, the way farm people do. Emil Draxler stopped his truck at the fence one evening, looked at the crooked little rows, and asked if the boy meant to grow himself a park out there on good cropland. He laughed when he said it. It was never a cruel laugh. People simply could not find the sense in it, and what a man cannot understand, he will often turn into a joke. Word went around at the elevator in Berwick. The Sundberg boy was planting a hedge in the middle of nowhere, 300 little sticks in a line, and would not say why. Even at home, the wondering ran the same way. His grandfather Niels, who had farmed that ground longer than anyone living, leaned on the gate and shook his head. "They are only bushes," he said. "You do not fence the sky." Carl said nothing either way. Ingrid told the boy his rows were straight, which was her way of leaving him to it. No one forbade him. No one pushed. They only watched and waited to see what the foolishness would come to. He had figured it himself, though he told no one that either. 2 winters before, he had noticed something along the old broken fence row at the west end of the pasture, where a few volunteer kataganas had grown up thick and wild against the wire. After every blizzard, the snow piled deep on the windward side of that tangle, in a long white ridge. But just beyond it, on the far side, the ground lay nearly swept, a bare strip of frozen grass where the sheep could still get at the stubble when everything else was buried. The wind hit the brush, and something happened to it there, and the snow it carried came down early and stayed put. The boy had walked that swept strip a dozen times, thinking, if a thin, ragged line of brush could do that by accident, he reasoned, then a good, thick line, set on purpose in the right place, could throw the drifts off the yard and off the lane, and out into the empty field where they did no harm. He did not have the words for it. He only had the strip of bare grass and the certainty it gave him. The thing works the way any good windbreak works, and there is nothing magic in it. Moving air carries snow the way a river carries silt. When the wind meets a barrier it cannot easily pass through, it slows, and slow air cannot hold what fast air can. So the snow drops out, most of it on the near side and just behind, in a long drift shaped like the wave that made it. Past that, in the lee, the ground stays open, a living fence of close-planted shrubs. Caragana in that country does not stop the wind so much as tame it, and a tamed wind lays its load down where you want it instead of against your barn door. Set the line across the worst wind, far enough upwind, and you buy yourself a swept, open strip on the far side. That was all it was. That was everything. It did not come easy. The first winter, jackrabbits found the tender seedlings and girdled the bark on better than a third of them, and in spring, the boy walked the rows, pulling up the dead sticks and setting new ones in their place, wrapping the survivors against the hares. The second summer came in dry, week after week of hot wind and no rain, and half the little trees went yellow and curled. All that July and August, Anders hauled water by the pailful from the stock tank, 2 pails at a time, up and down the rows in the evenings when the heat let go. His grandfather watched him carry water to a hedge and said it was a lot of work for something that would only catch tumbleweeds. Then the third winter passed mild and open, hardly a real storm in it, and there was nothing at all to show. No great drift, no proof. Only knee-high brush on a bare plain, and a boy the neighbors had quietly decided was stubborn past sense. That was the low year. Anders said little. But one cold evening his father walked down from the barn carrying the second spade, and without a word, he knelt and began setting replacements in the gaps beside his son. They worked the line together until dark, and did not talk about it. After that, Carl came most evenings. By the 4th year, the rows had found their feet. The caraganas came on the way brush will, once its roots are down, chest high, then over a man's head, knitting together into a solid green wall 1/4 of a mile long. In summer, it hummed with sparrows. The neighbors stopped remarking on it, not because they had come around, but because a thing you have laughed at long enough simply stops being news. It became part of the place, that dark line across the north of the Sundberg quarter, and no one thought to ask what it was for anymore. The boy was near grown now. He still walked the line, but he had stopped waiting for anything. He had done the work. What came next was the weather's to decide. It came in the 5th winter. For 3 days beforehand, the signs stacked up the way the old-timers said they would. The cattle stood with their tails to the north and would not settle. The geese had gone through early and in a hurry. Nils tapped the glass on the porch and watched it fall and fall. And he said he had not seen it drop like that since the winter of 1936, when men died between the house and the barn. The air smelled of cold iron and of wood smoke off the chimneys. On the 3rd evening, the radio warned of a heavy storm moving down out of Canada and told people to bring in stock and stay off the roads. Anders walked the length of his tree line that night in the failing light, checking it the way you check a thing you have trusted your whole plan to. And then he went in. It struck before dawn, and did not let up for 3 days. The wind came out of the northwest at 50 and 60 miles an hour, and behind it, the temperature fell to 30 below and lower. It was a ground blizzard, the worst kind, the old snow lifting off the fields and mixing with the new until a man could not see the fingers of his own hand held out at arm's length. Drifts built to 8 and 10 and 12 feet. The whole county closed. Nothing moved on Willerud Road for 4 days, and Berwick was cut off from the world. Otto Reinhold farmed the next quarter east, and his cattle were caught in the open when it hit. They did what cattle do in a blizzard. They turned their backs to the wind and drifted before it, mile after blind mile, until a fence in the bottom of a coulee stopped them. The snow came down on them there against the wire, and by the time the wind quit, Otto had lost 19 head, smothered and frozen in a drift twice as tall as the animals themselves. It was a hard loss, the kind that takes a man years to climb back from, and there was no one to blame for it but the weather. When the storm broke and the men began to dig out, they found something they had not expected. Behind the Sundberg tree line, in its long lee, the ground lay nearly swept. The yard, the lane, and a good stretch of Willerud Road behind it, open to bare gravel, while the drifts stood 12 feet high 100 yards on either side. The wind had struck the wall of Caragana and dropped its whole white load in the field on the windward side, in one enormous ridge, exactly where it would harm nothing. Beyond the trees, the swept strip ran open and clear, the same bare, swept ground he had first found behind the old fence row, grown now to the width of a road. For 4 days it was the only passable road in the whole township. Otto Reinhold was the first to come and stand at the tree line. He had lost most of a winter's beef, and he came anyway, on foot. And he stood a long time at the end of the green wall, looking down the swept lane and then out at the great drift heaped in the empty field where the snow had chosen to lie. He did not say much. He took off one mitten, bent down, and laid his bare hand flat on the frozen, open gravel of the road, as if he had to feel it to believe it. Then he straightened and asked the boy one thing: which way the rows ran, and how far back from the road they stood. Anders told him. Otto nodded, looked at the line a while longer, and walked home. He was not the last. That spring, and the springs after, men who had laughed came quietly for seedlings and for the angle of the thing. Emil Draxler was among the first of them, and he said nothing at all about parks. In time, the county set its own living fences along the worst stretches of Willerud Road. None of it was announced. It spread the way sense spreads, once the ground itself has proved the point. Anders never once said that he had known. There is a kind of work that argues with no one and convinces everyone, but only years after it is done. A man plants against a storm he cannot yet see, and for a long time he looks like a fool to every eye but his own. What you set against the weather in a gentle year is the only word you will get to say when the hard one comes. The boy had understood that before he had the words for it. The trees were never the harvest. The harvest was the open road when every other road was shut, the neighbor's remaining cattle alive in a sheltered yard, and a thing learned by watching that would outlast the boy who learned it and go on guarding ground he would never walk. Anders Sundberg is past 70 now, and he still lives on the home quarter his people broke in 1911. The 3 rows he planted as a boy stand 40 feet tall, a windbreak you can see from 4 miles off, and the swept lane behind them opens clear every winter still. Most mornings you will find him out along the line in the cold, walking slow, checking the old trees. Last spring he set a new row at the west end, seedlings no thicker than a pencil, with a grandchild coming behind him to tamp the dirt. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story stayed with you, tell us in the comments about someone you knew who saw something early and was proven right by time. Subscribe for more quiet stories from the land, and we will see you on the next one.